welcome to episode 542 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are things this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. I spent the entire weekend clearing 50 gigs off my phone so I could reinstall Honkai Star Rail. Yes. This is not even sponsored, guys. I had to reinstall it for the Fate crossover happening in a week. 1 week from now. They got me. Do you know how ridiculous mobile games are? I have to keep Arena and Honkai Star Rail on my phone. That's it. That's the whole phone.
How does your phone handle that? Yeah,
I need a second phone.
A lot of gigs.
I just need a second phone just for games, and then one for actually making calls. We don't make calls for browsing Reddit. One for browsing Reddit, and one for playing games.
Wait, do you spend money on Honkai Star Rail? I remember hearing about this creator that spent like 40 grand on some WWF mobile game and got mercilessly made fun of by the rest of the internet for it. I feel like people sometimes go a little extreme.
S0 basic gang, free to play, friendly. I think I bought a couple of battle passes, so like $5 a month.
Yeah, I mean that's fine.
But I spent way more money on Final Fantasy. I bought all of the borderless versions or whatever over the weekend. And then I just realized the bundles didn't have everything. Like there's no Joshua borderless or whatever in those bundles. So I got to wait for the arena daily deals. It's like so aggravating. I'm like, I have money, Wizards. Please take it. You can't get it.
What are you gonna do with them? What format are you gonna play them in? Draft. Oh, you get the card styles in draft. Draft. I was going to say, yeah, you only draft.
I mean, realistically, Seth, even though we have all these bannings, none of these cards are playable in standard. So draft is the only place you can appreciate your borderless cards, okay?
Yeah, you get to see all the Final Fantasy cards there. Well, we're getting off track. We got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How you doing today?
I'm still waking up. So, yeah. I'm great. I processed a lot of the banning news, and yesterday was Store Champ, so I got one last good take at standard to try to win some of the promos.
Did you get it?
How'd it go?
Did you get Ultima?
I did. I got Ultima. I got the Squall. I got the top 8 Diabolus. I got rolled in the end because, well, let's not lie here. Mono red is pretty efficient. So
was pretty efficient.
Was efficient, yes.
Anyway, we got a good topic today. It was ban list day, our yearly ban list window, and I'm about as happy as I've ever been about a ban list announcement. This was a good one. We're going to jump into that, and then we'll see how much time we have after that. There was also an interesting new secret lair drop featuring kind of an iconic retro video game character, and then some other news we might get into. So that's on the list, but first off, the ban announcement. But before we get into that, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results in a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, it's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic. And let's start with the big news. As of recording this, about an hour ago, Wizards announced the yearly ban list window. So the way bannings work in Magic now is there's a ban list update a few weeks after every set, but those are emergency ban list updates where normally things don't change in standard unless something's really out of whack. But the yearly window is a time where Wizards can change cards, ban cards, just to make the format more fun. And I was very curious to see how they were going to handle this, because last year we got a no changes yearly ban list update. So I was a little worried that this year maybe they wouldn't do much, but I was very wrong. And Wizards went super hard on this one. Richard, why don't you tell us what they actually changed, and then we can dig into this announcement.
All right, sit down, folks. It's a long list. Banned and restricted, June 30th. Standard. Corey Steelcutter, Monstrous Rage, Heartfire Hero, banned. The red monsters of the format. Did you play Omniscience? Don't worry. Abuelo's Awakening, banned. Did you play Beans? Don't worry. Up the Beanstalk, banned. And in case you're feeling a little retro, going back to the bounce deck that was terrorizing Standard a couple months ago, Hopeless Nightmare, This Town Ain't Big Enough, banned. So pretty much like all the top decks and some bounce for some good measure got hit. And then Alchemy, Core Steel Cutter, banned. No one cares. It's suspended until they balance it. Pioneer Best of One, Tybalt's Trickery is banned. Historic Counterspell, unbanned. But the big news, 7 cards in Standard, banned.
I am so incredibly happy. I did a video on Friday talking about what I would ban if I was doing the ban list, what I thought Wizards was banned. And I didn't even dare ask for this much. In my dream world, I was like, maybe they can ban like 3 of the red cards and maybe Omniscience. Anything beyond that's going to be a bonus. Wizards, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely knocked it out of the park. This is exactly what I was hoping for. When they announced they were going to 3-year standard rather than 2-year standard and trying to tamp down on not doing bannings other than this one window, I was hoping they would use this yearly ban list window for exactly this. It's like a pseudo rotation to the format where you get rid of this old stuff that's been at the top of the meta for way too long, but it's sticking around because rotation's slower now. Last year they did nothing, and arguably that was a fine choice with how things turned out last year. This year though, oh my god, they really hit everything. I'm curious, Grim, you're just waking up to all this news. What do you think of these changes? What's your just gut reaction?
I think my gut reaction is that I think this is just nitpicking, but I would have swapped Heartfire Hero for Manifold Mouse. I do not think Heartfire Hero is a big enough problem. I think it's the Manifold Mouse problem because that card having Offspring, all of that, yada yada yada.
Would you like a conspiracy theory on this, Krim?
Huh?
I think here's the tinfoil hat theory. If they banned Manifold Mouse, they would have had to refund rare wild cards on Arena. But if you ban Heartfire Hero, you only got to refund uncommon wild cards on Arena.
Okay, I mean, you know what? I don't know if that's a real thing that factors into it. Maybe it is. Who knows?
I do think
So,
I do
actually-
think in general banning the lore rarity card makes sense, even from a paper perspective, right? Because rares are like more valuable a lot of times. So if you ban the lower rarity card, it hurts a little bit less financially. So I can see defaulting to the lower rarity card if you have to choose between two. What were you gonna say, Richard?
Of the 7 cards banned, only 2 are rares. The rest are uncommons and commons. So that's
Yep.
kind of interesting. I don't know how much the common versus or uncommon versus rare thing is, but it's kind of funny that all the support cards that are insanely broken are at common and uncommon, and that 5 of the 7 are actually lower rarity.
We said that a while back in another podcast, right? Like that we talked about, you, me, and Seth, we talked about how busted the commons and uncommons were. I got yelled at online. It's like, oh, what do you want Magic to be more expensive? No, I genuinely think that it's just these cards are all nuts, and there's a lot of very good commons and uncommons. Like, if you think about it, we still have a ton of uncommons that I think are busted, right? Like, in any other world, like, Sheltered by Ghosts is an insane card, right? Like we are talking about, like, some of the really good cards are in, like, the uncommon rarity. So, personally, I still think that Manifold Mouse is more of a problem than Heartfire Hero. I don't understand the Heartfire Hero concern, but whatever. I'll take it, right? I'll take that. I think Monstrous Rage, if you're not banning Manifold Mouse, you gotta ban Monstrous Rage. I think one of these two have to go, right? So okay. And then Steel Cutter was a fine choice. I'm surprised that they did it.
So, on the red cards, Grim, I also had Manifold Mouse. Like, so I was 100% Corey Steel Cutter's got to go. I was 100% Monstrous Rage had to go. And then I really wanted another mouse card gone. My pick was also Manifold Mouse. Wizards went with Heartfire Hero as the second mono red / mouse card instead. Do you think this is enough to power down Mono Red? I think there's a strong argument, despite Is It seeing more play. I think Mono Red might actually be the best deck. If you look at win rates and like how well it's performed over the last few weeks, I think Mono Red might actually just be better than Is It. Do you think, without Heartfire Hero and Monstrous Rage, how good is Mono Red now? Like, is it still a top tier deck? Is it still one of the best decks in the format? Does it crumble and fall to tier 3 status? What's your reaction to that? Any idea?
I mean, it was tier 0 because it was so far ahead of everybody else. So it now is brought down to the lowly tier 1 like area, to be honest. I think it's still really good because I think a while back, I did that video where we just tested because we had assumed that Monstrous Rage was banning or getting banned, but it actually didn't. I had played Red without Rage, and it was still very good. Like, I did not care that I lost Rage. Now, I would, however, care if I lost Manifold Mouse. So I actually am very curious as well, but I think it took a hit, but I think it still has a lot of things that can replace Monstrous Rage. It might swap up its 1-drop, but I guess the difference here is now you don't have the God curve of Hero into Manifold Mouse.
Yeah.
So I do think it took a big hit, but do I think Mono Red is like dead? No.
I think I mostly would agree with that. I think losing Heartfire Hero is a really big downgrade, just because, like you said, the curve of turn 1 hero into Manifold Mouse doesn't exist anymore. Without Monstrous Rage, Manifold Mouse, there's more pressure on it. You can't use Monstrous Rage to give Trample and then Mouse give Double Strike. You need to offspring it or have multiple copies. So I think it does power it down. I think the biggest issue they're going to have is there just isn't another Mouse 1-drop in Red. So if you want a 1-drop, which you kind of need to be aggro, you're either going to have to play a non-mouse card, which there's certainly plenty of good Red 1-drops. You could play a Kellen or a Swift Spear or whatever, but it's not going to synergize with the mice, or you're going to have to go into white to play like Flowerfoot Swordmaster or Cheeky House Mouse or something. What do you think? Go ahead.
Hear me out. What if you don't need any of those anymore? Because we still have a good old card, Slick Shot Show Off. So
you think
still
just don't really worry about the 1-drop so much and just like go max power? Yeah.
I think you still keep the 1-drop. You just don't care about the mice package anymore.
Okay. So just generic Mono Red. But that makes me wonder, like, does that mean Manifold Mouse gets cut anyway? Like, if you're going to go generic Mono Red, maybe Manifold Mouse isn't good enough because it really needs other mice to be that powerful. So maybe we just have non-tribal Mono Red now. Maybe like the mice synergies don't matter as much.
Yeah, the mice synergy might just eat it here, and instead now you just go because to mono red aggression as it was before, because that was mono red before the mice package, right? Like we had a lot of like the slick shots and all these absurdly bursty turns, and I mean we all kind of forget that leyline still exists.
Yeah, that might be the direction. Slick shot, leyline, the lesser spells, and just go to town. What do you think, Richard? How good will red be post Mannings?
I mean, mice is dead, right? Because your manifold needs a mouse target, right? So without good mice, it's kind of useless. But red deck wins is always there, right? And we know the red cards are strong, even with Steel Cutter biting the dust. So you will have a red deck. It probably won't be tier 0, hopefully, but they will exist. So I don't know. Like, we still have Screaming Nemesis, right? We still have ways to shut down life gain, right? And then if prowess is still a thing, which maybe because Vivien is still a thing, right? You have Magebane Lizard and stuff like that. So I don't know. So my guess is they want red deck playable, but not to be like tier 1 or tier 0. And they probably accomplish that, but it would not shock me if at the end of the day, red deck was still the best deck in the format, right? Because the red pile is still very strong without Monstrous Rage, without the mice, without the Steel Cutter. It's like a bunch of efficient burn spells and creatures, right? That's enough if you're dirtling too much, right?
I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, though, because I feel like if you can take 2 or 3 bannings to the face and still be the best deck, that's just like, how overpowered was that deck to begin with? Like, so I got to imagine it's got to get worse at least.
Well,
what do you think
all
about
your competition got a hit too, right? So like all the competition to this deck also got a hit, right? So
that is very true. There's a couple of decks we'll get to in a minute that kind of dodge, but really this did take out like a huge chunk of the top tier of the meta. You mentioned is it? Oh, go ahead, Grim.
I was going to ask, do you think that Nightmare eating it actually stops Pixie? I think This Town Ain't Big Enough is the one that like I wanted to see out of Pixie.
Wait,
This Town Ain't Big Enough, did that have to go?
What did you want? You want the Otter?
Nightmare. I'm surprised Hopeless Nightmare got banned. I wanted This Town Ain't Big Enough to go. Because this town is exactly what I think is a
Wait, this
blowout
town did
in
go.
that.
So Hopeless Nightmare,
Yes, yeah,
the
that
thing
did
that
that
makes
one
you
have to
discard,
go?
and then this town, the thing that bounces to went away.
I
Yeah,
think
did Nightmare have to go?
well, so in
I
some
think
sense,
so.
I thought that the cards that had to go were the red aggro cards and something from Omniscience. Those were the cards that I was like, that's a baseline that they have to go. I think with Wizards doing this bigger ban list, which I like, I think you had to get Hopeless Nightmare too. Hitting this town is nice, but if you look at the meta, like Esper is kind of on the downswing. I mean, I guess Pixie decks, self bounce decks have been on the downswing for a few months now, but the most popular versions Orzhov right now, and leaving that completely untouched, I think would be kind of a mistake. Plus, Hopeless Nightmare is just, the play pattern's so brutal. Like, it's so swingy when your opponents have these games where it's like turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, turn 2 Pixie, Hopeless Nightmare. It feels like the grief scam in Modern almost, but in Standard. So I'm happy to see it go just because of the play pattern. But I don't know. I guess you could argue that it didn't really have to go. What do you think, Richard? Like, did it have to get out of there?
Well, this was the best deck before Steel Cutter arrived, right? So
Yeah.
when you hit the Steel Cutter, you're gonna go back to this. And I think beyond being the best deck, it's the play pattern. No one wants to play a game starting with 3
Yeah.
cards
It's
or
just not
whatever,
fun.
right? So I feel even if this deck was somewhat balanced, Wizards would just hit it because it led to too many arena frowny faces. So
Yeah.
I think you gotta hit it, and I think it's the hopeless nightmare. Like getting your bounce stuff is frustrating. Your stuff bounced is frustrating enough, but it's really the hopeless nightmare that, for whatever reason, was also chipping away at your life while you were losing all your cards, right? Like it would probably be decent enough without that, right? But the fact that it's actually like burn on top of that is like kind of insulting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to be the most unfun card. Like I feel everyone would take like a monstrous rage mouse to the face rather than get hopeless nightmared out of the game. So
Yeah, at
I
least
feel they
not
just got to do it
yeah.
for play pattern reasons.
If you really look at this list, like, holistically, you can kind of argue that outside of maybe Dimir, which is the biggest deck that probably dodged, but you can kind of argue that they really banned something from all the best decks in Standard for the past year. Like, if you go back to last fall, it was Zur Overlords with Up the Beanstalk, then or the South Bounce decks took over in the winter, and then we shifted into, like, the red era with all the mono red decks and the cutter decks. So I really like that. It seems like they looked back and they didn't just go, okay, what was busted at the Pro Tour last weekend? Cutter and mono red, we gotta get rid of that. Omniscience maybe, but they actually went further back and like got rid of some cards that I don't think you can really argue that like this town, Hopeless Nightmare, even Up the Beanstalk, are that problematic right now today. Like if you just jumped on the arena ladder yesterday, there's a good chance that you wouldn't even play against those cards very often at all. But I like that they kind of like tried to future proof the format a little bit, and they took into account, well, maybe if we ban all this stuff, it's just going to be Zur Overlords again, or it's just going to be Self Bounce again. So I really like that they took that holistic approach and went kind of big on this one.
Which that's going to be very important as you do a 3-year standard, right? Like
Yes.
actually not being afraid to ban things that are just too strong. Obviously, I wouldn't get too ban happy and ban every single thing that everyone complains about, but it has to be one of the strongest cards. And they did pick some of them. And Beans is busted, and I'm sad we won't like get to see it in the diamond weapon deck, the self mill deck, but like whatever. I guess these bans were pretty good. I'm just happy they did it.
Is
So
there Oh, go ahead, Richard.
I was gonna say, so they had to do this, right? So we're
Yeah.
coming off the Pro Tour and many big events where red combined was like over 50% of the metagame. So they had to do this. But is this actually good for the game, right? We're like, look, people don't like rotation. So we're going to go 3-year rotation, right? People don't like the idea that their deck becomes irrelevant in 18 months or 2 years or whatever, right? But then out of the blue, 7 cards get hit. And even amongst the cards, like the non-tier 1 decks got hit, right? So if you are being like super conscious, you're like, okay, look, Core Steel Cutter is destroying the metagame. I'm not going to buy into it because I know it's getting banned. Let me build Yuna Overlords, right? It's some kind of like tier 2 deck. Surely we can play it post bannings. You get hit. Like, Krim, you quit One Piece because they banned your leader. Like, what does this make you feel when you see 7 cards on the ban list, like kind of unannounced? Like, isn't it a little scary?
Well, I quit One Piece because they banned a whole archetype to me. So like at that weekend. So I mean, yeah, obviously as someone who has played card games, right? You're kind of expecting it, right? That you're eventually, if your deck becomes good, there's some kind of banning. So I would feel like if I'm playing any kind of competitive environment at any point, just wait until like a couple of weeks before the tournament or maybe the month before the tournament, then buy the deck. Because I would be like, oh, God, I'll practice online. I don't want to deal with BNRs.
That's the sweaty way to do it.
I feel like this is just how it's going to have to work if you're going to slow. I think this is the cost of going to 3-year standard. I feel like if you don't want big BNR updates like this, then you do more rotations. Like, I feel like standards got to change one way or another. And like, if we think it's better to have 3 years of cards in standard and have it rotate more slowly, but then have these yearly big BNRs, I don't know if that's better or not. Personally, I like 2 years standard with quicker rotation. And then you wouldn't have to deal with, like, if you look at this list outside of Corey Steelcutter, which Wizards actually shouted out in their announcement, is like they would have emergency banned it based on what they have seen. If this wasn't the yearly window, this was actually so egregious, it falls into the Oko, Omnath, Felidar Guardian, like emergency ban level. So that was going to go either way as a mistake card. But if you look at the rest of these cards, most of them are going to rotate, right? Like a big chunk of these would have been rotating anyway. So I think this is just the price of doing business with a longer standard. And if people want longer standard, then they're just going to have to accept that when stuff gets out of whack, you're going to have to ban more things. My question is, do you think Wizards...
Wait.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of these rotated.
So Up the Beanstalk would have rotated, right?
Wait, would Eldraine rotate?
Yes, because last fall was Duskborn. So yeah, all of that era would have been rotating this year. So like Hopeless Nightmare, Up the Beanstalk, Monstrous Rage would be gone. This town would have survived, I believe, and in Heartfire Hero. So about half of them would have rotated if we had
I thought Eldraine stayed. Okay.
So my question for you is, Wizards mentioned a couple of things that they learn from this that they think they can try to do to avoid these issues in the future. I'm curious, should we just expect these big ban list updates every year? Or do you think there's actually a way they can do 3-year standard and design cards so they won't be so broken that we need this? The two things in specific they shouted out was they need to be more precise with their 1-mana cards and cards that synergize with 1-mana cards. This goes back to what we talked about, how standard kind of felt like modern, where it was just nothing more than like 2 mana was seeing play, all these efficient cards. So that was one of them. The second thing they said is we need to scrutinize and be careful with the rate of cards that are challenging to interact with favorably, which is Corey Steelcutter, Up the Beanstalk, where they're examples where even if you deal with them, it's a losing exchange. You're already behind a card, you're behind a prowess token. Do you think that with these lessons in mind, there is a way to design standard to avoid this? Or do you think this is just what standard looks like at the current power level and power creep and whatnot?
I mean, I think there's going to be this right now feels like they obviously are going to take into account, but we won't see that full effect happen until like
for
4 years, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Which is my concern a little bit, because I really don't want to go back to like wet noodle fight like Ixalan, right? So I do like higher power standard, but this might have been way too strong, I guess. But I am very curious. So if Eldraine would rotate, right, like this coming year,
yep,
would these cards have been here if it were like 2-year standard? Because I'm curious, like, what their vision was when they designed 3-year standard, right? Like, where does it actually begin? Did it begin, like, with what Overlord, like, Duskmourn, let's just say, and it wasn't meant to have Eldraine? So, like, we won't see what their vision of, like, actual 3-year standard is until rotation? Is that the case?
I actually think we definitely won't see their full vision until rotation, and it might actually be the following rotation. Because I think they talked about, like, Eldraine era, Murders at Karlov Manor, they like had some idea they were switching to 3-year standard, but they couldn't completely design the sets around it. And then I think like Outlaws of Thunder Junction might have been the first set where they were like fully in on 3-year standard. So I think we'll really won't know like the full vision of WotC with this change until like the next rotation after this one. And then we should have like all cards that were completely designed with 3-year standard in mind. I think this rotation will get mostly 3-year standard, but the next rotation should be solely stuff they designed with that in mind.
Okay, because like, see, I want to see what that vision is like, but I guess in this way they kind of just went skirted around. Oh yeah, this should have rotated, so we're gonna just ban these anyways. So I'm excited to still see what 3-year standard looks like, and if they're willing to lob this much off, then hey, that's a good thing. That shows that they're willing to actually care about they care about the health of the format. So.
That was the most encouraging part for me, just that they actually were willing to take this step. And I wasn't sure if they were or not. Like, I was really I figured they had to ban Cutter and something for mono red, but to take such a big step, because they talked about, like, the yearly ban list window is to try to make the format fun, make it as enjoyable as possible for the next year. It's not just about tournament win rates or whatever. It's bigger than that. And this is the first time that we've really seen them actually embrace that and make changes that I would say are really designed with that goal in mind, which I find very encouraging. Like, I think this was definitely not a, standard is flourishing type announcement that everyone's just going to meme on. I think this came across like very positive in the reaction I've seen, to go back to what Richard said. And this is still like a very enfranchised audience, but if you just look at the reaction on the Magic internets, on Reddit and social media, it seems very positive. Like that's the comments you're getting from people. Does that include the new person from Final Fantasy that just jumped into the game? Maybe not. Maybe they feel differently about it. But I haven't seen many people complaining about the huge list of bannings this go around.
I mean, this is all good and all. Does it move the needle? And I feel it doesn't move the needle, right? Like, I do not want to buy into paper standard, right? Like, if I do, it's because there's like an RCQ or something with some cool promo, and I will pull the crim of assembling the 75 cards the night before. But I would not buy a standard deck with the intent of playing it for the next 3 years, as Wizards of the Coast would want me to. It does not unlock any of my Final Fantasy cards. I was memeing with Seth earlier, but like, I want to play a job select deck, right? Like, that's not viable whatsoever. I want to play Chocobos, right? Like, it doesn't unlock my Final Fantasy cards. So, if you're a tournament grinder, great. But I feel this is not going to change your FNM. You know what I mean? And like, it's not like standard FNM will suddenly pop hard or anything like that. So I feel this is all kind of a nothing burger. And I feel like the biggest learning that Wizards will take away from basically any of this is that Final Fantasy sells with like irrelevant game pieces, right? So like, if you put your Stola on a card, right, it sells, right? And people will go crazy for collectors, the premium version, the one where you make like 1,000% markup. So if they use that, they'll understand that you don't need to power creep the format. Okay, so you can just put waifus on cards and it'll sell. You don't need to power creep. If you don't power creep, you're not going to run into this like very hard problem of like balancing 1-mana spells and 3-mana spells. Like, the fact that at the last Pro Tour, nothing over 3 mana value is played is kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah, for standard especially.
So if they go 3-year standard, you just gotta print weak cards, okay? Cards that are so, like, a 5-mana 5/5 flying first strike. There's no way you can break that, right? Like, it's gonna be what it is, right? So like,
going
if
back
they
to
do
the
that,
Carnage Tyrant era.
yeah, right. And then you just put your Stola on it and call it a day, right? Like, that's all you do, and you won't have this like balancing act that they need to do. So I feel that is the real takeaway from this. Like, yes, tournament grinders like this, but did it really change anything for FNM? And I feel no. Like, are more people gonna play standard because of this? I still feel less. I feel like this banning looks super scary, right? If you're just a casual person, you're like, 7 cards banned. Oh my goodness, right? So I'm like, I'm just kind of meh.
I mean, on the other hand, we've definitely heard the comments from some people, at least, who are like, I came back because of Final Fantasy. Why am I dying on turn 3 all the time? Why did I bother
now
coming
you die
back?
in
So,
turn
like,
4
there
to give
is
your mid range. You still can't play your Final Fantasy deck, right? Like, it's still not viable.
As far
Wait,
as playing
but
your
Demir
dedicated
played
like Final Fantasy deck, but at least you get some more time to play your stuff. That's actually a good segue, because I'm curious. So we got these bannings. If you look at the metagame page right now, is it Prowess got hit by a banning? Mono red deck number 2 hit banning. Omniscience, banning. Deck number 4, Dimir midrange. That one dodged. 4-color Azura got a banning. Self-Bounce got a banning. Azorius Control mostly dodged. And then you get to the black midrange decks that also, like Golgari or Mono Black, are like 1% of the meta, but they're next up on the list. I'm curious, what do you guys see as the biggest winners? Like, short term, you're going to a tournament next weekend. You're trying to win. You're not just trying to have fun. What are you breaking out? Like, for your short term, what jumps to the top of the meta as a result of this? Is it a new deck that was lower tier? Does one of the banned decks survive? I feel like Dimir's an easy choice to be, because it was already posting good win percentages and it didn't really get hit by bannings. But I'm curious what else is on your guys' list. What would you play if you had to go to a tournament this weekend post bans?
Well, what else? Do I have to choose something else?
You can choose Dimir. You can choose, yes, you can pick Dimir, Krim. That's fine.
Because I was, once Final Fantasy released, I started cooking, right? So I was like, all right, well, Cecil's the truth. And with Corey Steelcutter being so darn good, I started playing Azure Beastbinder to turn Steelcutter into nothings. And and the reason I bring that up is because then Fairy Mastermind himself, Yuta Takahashi, posted his list, what he took to the Pro Tour, and it turns out he was cooking with Cecil and Azure Beastbinder. And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, so I'm onto something here. I think there is something here. And wow, Cecil's a very good card. It is one hell of a 1-drop. And I don't know. I mean, I still think that Dimir midrange for a while, right? That was that was the tier 1 deck. And then it transitioned into Dimir, like self-balance, enchantments, yada, yada, yada. But at one point, that version of Dimir was the top deck and would still break through in a sea of red. Sometimes every now and then, obviously, it's not winning them all like red was, but it would break through, which means that there's still a very good deck there. It's just not as good as like kill you absurdly fast like Monstrous Rage Red. So if that's the case, then I think that's naturally the next best deck. And I also think Mono Black Demons or any of the variants of demons using Unholy Annex is so back.
Yeah, I would say that black, like, overall is probably the biggest winner. I think Dimir is probably the most top tier of the black decks right now, but I think Golgari's a winner. Any of the, like, Orzhov or Mono Black Demon style decks, I think are big winners, because they didn't get hit at all. It'll be interesting to see at rotation. They do lose Shieldred, and they do lose a lot of their removal, although it seems replaceable. Like, Cut Down goes, Go for the Throat goes, but you can play Shoot the Sheriff instead, so they'll have to, like, rejigger their removal suite a little bit, but I still think they should be very good. I'm curious, Kim, what about Control? Because that was another archetype that I felt like, okay, blue-white Control or Jeskai Control, Stock Up was a card that people talked about, maybe needing a banning. It dodged this time. So Control didn't get hit by anything. Maybe having the pressure of these super fast, turn 3 kill aggro decks out of the format. Does this mean Control's going to be on the upswing? Do you think we're going to see like Azorius or Jeskai be a thing?
I mean, Jeskai I forgot about just because I feel like it's been so long since I thought about Jeskai. I've been on the blue-white train. Blue-white has had very good hate pieces, but now with the meta just being a bunch of question marks, if it were a next week tournament, I would not play blue-white. Right?
So like
I don't know what I'm controlling.
Maybe when you see what the meta shakes out to be, then maybe Control could be a choice, but short term, you'd probably avoid it.
Yeah, because like what am I building, right? Like most of my deck right now, because like that's what I played at all these events is blue-white or Dimir. Mm-hmm. And my blue-white list has like High Noon right out of the sideboard. It's got 2 main deck Authority of Consuls. Do I even need those anymore? I'm playing Change the Equation in the main. And
yeah, you were pretty tech for the red meta, weren't you?
Yeah. I was doing great against red. And I will say there is one thing. As we move into like a potentially more grindy matchup, I guess in the quickness, if I were to play some form of blue-white, there is a card that has absolutely gone above and beyond what I've asked for its mana cost, and it's Stoic Sphinx.
Really?
And that card is just 2 blue, 5/3 flash. It has hexproof as long as you have not casted a spell this turn. Now, if everybody starts playing like edicts and all that stuff, then that becomes a problem, right? But as of right now, that card is a closer. That card actually kills people very quick. And when you're a control blue-white Dirtle deck, you do nothing. So you wait until they do something. So they've kind of essentially already spent mana on their turn. So it's almost like it has this pseudo ward effect if you really think about it, because they have to spend mana, make you care about it so that you interact. And then if you don't, then you just business as usual, clock them for 5. So I don't know. Maybe blue-white control does change its pieces, but I think Stoic Sphinx is a card that I would look at in the 75. I play 3 out of the sideboard.
Interesting.
Nowhere to
Yeah, I
run.
forgot about that card.
Nowhere
Yeah,
to run.
but the bounce decks got
Sure,
hit. So
sure.
But you
maybe-
can still
maybe
play it
it'll
in
be
Jameer
okay.
mid-range.
Yeah, I guess that's
Oh yeah, that's true. Jameer
What a-
midrange is a card.
What about you, Richard? What would you be looking at as a winner from this if you're going to a tournament? Anything stick out?
Okay, so I think the bar that you compare everything to is Dimir mid-range, right? It's like a
Yeah.
fair deck. It does the thing. It's proven to be powerful. And my real question is it like mid-range fest again, where you play a bunch of like variants of mid-range and control? Or is there another broken combo deck that was hidden away behind prowess and mono red? Oculus is still there. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
That's not a combo deck per se, but it's like a graveyard unfair deck. Vivi is still here, so you're not slinging Koi Steel Cutters, but you can Vivi, you can Cauldron. Like there's maybe some kind of unfair shell there. So that is my question, right? Because if another unfair deck takes over the format, and the format is yet again turn 3, turn 4, interact or die, then I think we've gone nowhere, right? And then if
That
we are Demir mid-range fest, I don't know. I guess Krim will be excited, but I don't know. But that'll be like the past standards, right? Remember, for the longest time, it was Black X. It was like Black Blue, Black Red, Black whatever, right? So that is the question. Is there a looming combo deck that was being gatekept by the current basically Omniscience was just like more efficient at doing the combo than anyone else? That's gone, or maybe it's gone. I don't know. Is there another one? So that's what people got to look at.
I can't believe that Cauldron has gone through this whole format and not broken yet.
Oh,
Right?
Although-
like these paw curls.
Vivi might be the card.
Vivi
Like I don't know
Cauldron.
I don't know if you looked at the tournament results from this past weekend, but the latest results, Is It Cauldron actually outperformed Is It Cutter, like a 58% win rate or something absurd over the past weekend. So it seems like it might be catching on, and that's just a straight up Vivi Cauldron deck that's playing like Marauding Mako and Fear of Missing Out, and you just try to like pop off with Vivi under Cauldron. The other combo deck I want to shit out is Insidious Roots. I don't know if you conceptualize that as a combo deck, but that's another deck that has been posting good results. Even at the Pro Tour, it posted good results in Constructed. So I think that's another dark horse to keep an eye on. And I gotta shout out Kefka. I think it might finally be Kefka time. Like, Kefka's a card that every time I play it, I feel like this card's so busted. But the meta was just so fast to play a 5-drop. But now things are slowing down. I actually think some sort of Grixis Kefka deck could actually be pretty legit. If you're already playing like Dimir midrange, it's not that hard to like splash into a little bit of red for Kefka if you want to.
If the best decks in the format are midrange, we've said it time and time again, that's a fine format. I know that for a while we all complained like, oh my god, everyone's just Grixis midrange, black-red blue-black midrange. But I would rather that, right? I would rather that than us having this like hyper aggro format or whatever.
Yes.
So also one last thing though is, or one more thing I want to talk about on that is all these things that you've talked about, right? All the cauldrons, all these cards, right? Richard's concerns are like, okay, well, if no cards over 3 mana are getting played, that's a problem, right? But so let's say no cards over 3 mana are getting played, and this is still a hyper fast meta. What are we gonna do at rotation? Because we lose temporary lockdown. So like, that one thing that can actually oppose all these decks, I don't know what Edge of Eternities has, but I sure hope it has a temporary lockdown replay.
Permanent lockdown.
At least,
Yeah.
It might be okay though. Actually, the Crim Special split up. Now that Cutter's gone, maybe that's good enough if you're just playing straight up creature aggro. I think you really need a temporary lockdown against Cutter because I got rid of Cutter. But against like
Cauldron.
creature like Convoke or whatever, I kind of like split up in some of those matchups. So maybe split up's enough. Cauldron's a good point.
Split up's so situational, right? Like it's like in standard, it's like okay, they once that becomes the sweeper, it goes back to like when people played around Settle, right? Okay, cool. I'm gonna half swing. I'm gonna half leave back. Right? And then I don't know, temporary lockdown at least picks up Cauldron. And I don't know, other weird permanents that are being abused, right? So I don't know. I hope we get something to replace temporary lockdown.
Yeah. No, that would be a good thing to replace.
Here's the beauty of the last format. Because you had so many fast decks that attack the different dimensions, you couldn't build a control deck, right? If you honed in against aggro, you got dumpstered by Omniscience, right? If you put a Spell Pierce in your deck for Omniscience, you get dumpstered by aggro. That kept control out of the format. I think most people would agree that's what you want. You don't want control to be the face of the format unless you're Crib. So it's going to depend on what the metagame looks like. Because if it's only Dimir midrange, you can build a control deck that just dumpsters it, right? So, but if it's Dimir midrange plus an aggro deck plus a combo deck, now you only have 15 sideboard slots. What do you do? So I don't know. I don't like temporary lockdown as the one answer to every deck in the format. Like imagine it exiled graveyards as well for some reason. Then like all you do is just
play that.
Run temporary lockdown control, right? So I kind of like that you don't have a catch-all for the entirety of the format, so you can't just build mono control.
But like it wasn't even just control decks that played that, right? It was just such a good, efficient answer. For when things are busted, right? Like 1s and 2s, come on. I like those.
I feel like I liked it when it was a good sideboard card. I feel like once it got to the point where it was a 4 of main deck card, to me that was kind of like one of those flashing red lights that like there might be a problem going on because it is like a pretty narrowly focused sweeper, right? Where like you would hope that the meta wouldn't be in a place where you needed something like temporary lockdown in your main deck. So maybe we'll end up all right thanks to the bannings. Like maybe aggro will not be prevalent enough and it'll be okay. But yeah, it's funny, not a lot really leaves at rotation that matters, but temporary lockdown is by far the most important card that's leaving at rotation at this point.
Yeah.
So one other banning question before we move on. Is there anything else you wish was on the list today? Or is there anything that like sticks out like, they really should have considered or maybe should have banned this card? I know for me, the only one I'd shout out is Stock Up, just based mostly on play rate. I don't think that Stock Up's an egregious card, but when you see it being 60+% of decks, by Wizards' own criteria, that's where they start to get a little iffy on like cards being good for a format. So I thought there was some chance it would be in Stock Up, just purely based on its metagame percentage. But
Seth, you can have good cards. Good cards can exist, Seth. Please.
Hey, I'm not the one that said when something gets above 50%, it's one of the criteria for banning it. That was on Wizards. So also I heard, what do you think about Vivien? Do you think Vivien is safe now? Because when I talked to some of the pros at the Pro Tour, some of them were like,
baby boy alone. Okay.
Well, no, like a lot of the pros at the Pro Tour that I talked to, they were playing at the Pro Tour, were like, Vivien is actually the messed up card in prowess. Like that card's but there's no way they're going to ban it, but that is actually the card that's super messed up. So do you think the Vivi's, where does that land after all this?
I mean, Vivien was in such a good shell already that everything seemed busted. Yeah, it's one of those things where like Rakdos was so good, right? There was no one thing that I could think of, and it was more of just a bunch of things needed to go. So let's see what Vivien looks like in this new world. But I think that Vivien is strong, and that's fine. I personally, I don't think it should get banned yet. But do I see a world where some things could happen? If they print a ton more cheap busted cards, also no temporary lockdown in the format, this banning would probably come sometime later down the line, right? Like post rotation. We'll see what Edge of Eternities and the rest of this year brings. But as of right now, I don't think so yet.
On the banning schedule, we have one in 9 months. So because they push back rotation next year, they're going to do 2 yearly ban list updates, one 9 months from now, and then one at rotation beginning of the year 2027. But go on, Richard. Sorry.
from the mind that brought you Corey Steelcutter's mid. Vivi's a ticking time bomb. If not broken immediately right now, clearly broken, especially if you have cards like Stock Up in the format. There's no way this goes unchecked, right? Especially like if we are in a slow meta, like you have to be so fast that Vivi's like irrelevant. Like if you're in any kind of like slow grindy meta, like Vivi just takes over like so easy, right? So I think Vivi's one of those cards that will just sit there, and if it's not broken right now, give it 1 or 2 sets and it will be insanely broken. Like it's a win con, like in terms of burn, in terms of the body on board, and it generates you mana. Like what? And then we have stuff like Stock Up, which is incredible value, but you're not affecting the board, so like you might die if you just randomly cast Stock Up. Good thing you have this like creature that stabilizes the board, like pings your opponent down. So I think it's just a ticking time bomb. This thing's gonna be broken sooner or later if it's not already broken.
I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now, if it was a card that we were having conversations about. I do agree that it's too early to ban really anything. Like it would have to have like a Corey Steelcutter impact for it to be in the conversation for banning now, and I don't think it's at that point by any stretch. I do wonder if EV with these bannings will be more okay, because I think two of the biggest changes of these bannings is blocking can actually be a thing again now that like the mouse package is nerfed, the Monstrous Rage, you can actually like play blockers and try to defend yourself. And I also think removal just gets a lot better, because removal was so bad against Cutter, and Cutter was so much of the metagame that you saw a lot of decks kind of like almost trimming back on the amount of removal they're playing, because there was just no point in trying to fight on that axis. But now that we have these bannings, I wonder if maybe Vivi can be kept in check because you can play more removal and just kill it. Well, it's still like, I've come around. I think I was kind of meh on that card when it first bought. Like, is it going to be good enough? And the more I see of it, it is an absurd card. So we'll see where it lands. But yeah. So that's. Oh, go ahead, Grib.
I will say that cut down is one of the best ways to trade with that card.
And
that
rotating.
Also leaves.
Yeah. That one's out here.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't want any more bannings. I don't think I could ask for more, just because I don't know. I like just playing with all these cards and playing standard, right? I don't want a constantly ban heavy. I don't want the knee-jerk reaction to everything is to ban it. I want to play it and grind it out. And especially as I start re-entering my sweat era, where I'm like, okay, I kind of want to go back to RCQs. I love this standard. I thought it was like, it was just like exhilarating watching the mono red mirror. I loved watching the Pro Tour. I thought that was. I thought that was
Sweat Lord.
It's one of those things where that finals was not obvious, right? Like how okay, two red decks, they're gonna run into each other, it's over. But no. I'm talking like we're seeing like Ken Yukahiro playing generational Magic in mono red, right? Like I loved watching that Andy Garcia matchup versus Ken Yukahiro. Like that was a very fun mono red mirror. So I like that when any of these formats has these high level of interactions. It's not a one card stomp fest like Uro, take over the game, you lose, right? So I don't know.
I Cutter a little like that maybe. One
Cutter
card
didn't
take
even
over the
make
game, you lose.
Cutter didn't even make it into the finals. Okay.
Oh, in the finals, you mean?
It lost, right? So I don't know. I mean, I would rather watch those matchups than the Simic Food matchups. That's probably one of the worst Pro Tours I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, Pro Tour Oko was pretty rough. Yeah.
No, that one was rough, dude. That one was so bad. So yeah,
I feel the most skill intensive is like control mirrors and mid-range mirrors, because there is no possibility of getting run over, and it's your 75 against the other 75 and who can play it better, and like it's like impossible to get cheesed out basically, right? Whereas against aggro decks, if you mauled a 6 or something, you might actually get run over in the mirror real quick. So the slower mirrors I feel are actually the most interesting to watch.
But you don't think that like the game of do I block? How much of the burn do I use as removal? Right?
It's very interesting. And aggro decks are extremely hard to play. People are like, oh, mono red to the face, right? But like actually, when it's not like aggro versus control, where it's quite obvious what you're doing, right? When it's either aggro versus mid-range or aggro versus aggro, it becomes extremely difficult to play. So yes, it's very skill intensive, and it comes down to like one or two key moments. But I still like control mirrors. Even though they take forever, it's literally like my 75 versus your 75, and let's see who can get the most value out of everything. But all this to say, I don't care about standard. Give me block constructed, please. With standard being so big and fast, like, is it time to bring back block constructed so I can play my stupid Final Fantasy decks? Like, I want to play job select, right? I want to play summons or whatever. Is it block constructed a reasonable format now that standard is so big?
Isn't that what happened in Japan? Didn't they host a tournament? I remember seeing somewhere they hosted a tournament that was like Final Fantasy cards only.
Interesting. I missed that, but I can see that. I'm surprised they haven't done it on Arena at least. Like, I think the problem is it's from what I remember of blocks, that one set block constructed was always the weirdest aspect of block constructed, just because the set's not really designed necessarily to make its own decks. Maybe we've shifted more in that direction now, where you can build like real decks out of just a single set. So that's the only thing I think is holding it back, is that we just don't have blocks anymore. But I think if you just put up a Final Fantasy only queue on Arena, it would be super popular. Would that also be true for Edge of Eternities or Returning to Lorwyn or something? I don't know, but I wish they would at least explore that more somehow.
Wait, what? One set magic is peak. Like, it's limited. They clearly designed limited, right? So that you have like self-sufficient archetypes. But now you don't need to like draft all your pieces. You can actually just slam them all in and like fill out your deck. So
I mean,
I actually,
if your goal is
magic
to get
at least, why not, right?
Yeah,
like,
if you want a job select deck, that would get it done. And it seems like just low cost, like low effort to actually like put up a queue on Arena or do some tournaments for it. So yeah, hopefully they think more about that, especially when it comes to these like super popular sets like Final Fantasy. I think it would really thrive right now. Okay, one non-banning thing I wanted to mention. We got a new Secret Lair drop, and I know that's normally not notable, but this one got a bunch of exclusive cards. It's kind of like the X-Men drop we got before, but this time, Pritchard, what is the character that we're getting cards from?
All right, it's called Sonic, Friends and Foes. Yes, Sonic the Hedgehog has come to Magic. And we're not going to read the cards. There's a lot of them. You can check them out on MTG previews. But it's all the characters. So Sonic Knuckles, Dr. Eggman. I didn't even know that was his name. I thought it was Robotnik. Miles, Tails Power. Tails has a name. I didn't know that either. Shadow and Amy Rose. Is it Amy Rose from Doctor Who? Confused. But
I think we have two Amy Roses now.
The funny thing is, when Sonic gets hit, or when a creature you control with Flash or Haste is dealt damage, you pop out a treasure token, like how you lose your rings. It's hilarious, right? And then there's like a Sonic Soul Ring, a Fabricate, Open the Armory, Generous Gift, Deadly Dispute, Unexpected Windfall. Wait, there's a lot of them. And then there's a Colossus Hammer. Wait, is it Colossus Hammer? No, Hammer of Nizan, Lightning Greaves, the Reaver Cleaver, Weatherlight
Hammer.
Your Battle Sphere, Swiftfoot Boots. So there's 3 secret lairs in total. Sonic does not fit the fantasy aesthetic. What do you guys think? Is this good?
I'm past the point of caring whether it's good or not at this point, so whatever, like, it doesn't bother me. I'm mostly curious how popular it's going to be. We saw, like, the X-Men sell out instantly. Is this another be at your computer exactly at noon on release day and cross your fingers that you get through the line type of drop, Crim? Like, how popular is Sonic in 2025?
Very. Okay. There's actually been a resurgence. Banger, this is going to be a banger because there's been a resurgence in Sonic love, right? He kind of went away, kind of like it felt like, Sonic was just selling off the rights essentially, or to like Mario or Nintendo, yada, yada, yada. But then somewhere along the way, there was just this huge resurgence in like demand for Sonic. And then the movies did well. And like the movies are actually very good video game movies. I don't know. I mean, Keanu Reeves just played Shadow, right? So this is the makings of a, it's so good. And then I loved it. I absolutely thought it was a hilarious movie trilogy. But Jim Carrey is Robotnik, and that's all that matters. And I think these cards are gonna sell. Like, they're gonna sell so fast, and they naturally, because it's Sonic. And on top of that, I think they're busted. I think some of these cards are very strong when it comes to Commander. I do love Robotnik. I think Robotnik's a very fun card itself because it brings back Villainous Choice. But the main cards that I think is kind of wild is actually Shadow the Hedgehog.
Shadow's the one that I've seen like CDH players being really hyped for and talking about if this is going to be like a CDH commander. So Shadow the Hedgehog, double black, double red for a 4/2 haste. It's a hedgehog mercenary. When it or another creature you control with flash or haste dies, you draw a card. And then each spell you cast has split second if its mana was produced from an artifact. So essentially a treasure or a mana rock or something. Giving everything split second is kind of wild.
Boys.
Yeah.
We broke Soul Ring. All right. No, this card is crazy, right? And then think about like all the haste until end of turn spells, right? Like haste magic, things like that. So now those, or of course, the haste enablers like anger.
Right, that's going to be the
everything.
best, any sort of mass haste. And it triggers on itself, too. So worst case, if it dies, you get to draw another card. Yeah, that one seems very, very strong. And split second's very powerful. I imagine that's why CDH people are hyped about it, that split second makes it kind of easy to force through your combos and stuff, right?
It's Rakdos.
Yeah.
What combo do you have?
Ad-Naz.
You do have Ad-Naz, yeah.
You have Ad Nauseam. You could actually force through Splinter Twin.
I will complain just a slight bit to piggyback this, which I do think is going to be popular, like Krim said, but piggybacking this on something that Mark Rosewater said on his blog, and we're not going to get into all of it today because we're running short on time, but basically there's not a promise anymore to reprint the exclusive secret lair drop cards in some form or another. That was initially the promise, and then Mark Rosewater said this week that he used the wrong word and shouldn't have said promise, basically, that these cards will get reprinted. So my one concern, like always with these, is just like they're time limited. They're going to sell out super quick. And then I don't know how we ever get more of them in the future. So I hope they figure out a way to solve that issue. But as far as Sonic being in Magic at this point, I just don't really care all that much either way. Am I excited to build Sonic? Not really, but I know people are, and that's exciting for me.
I for some odd reason feel like the love for Sonic right now is at an all-time high because on my
Sega,
I didn't even
I'm an NES guy. Sega.
I mean, yeah, okay, that's a different story, right? But like the timeline, I think that I've got has just made it so that I don't see people complaining about Sonic, right? Like we're at that point now where I think there's just been so much coming to Magic that like, is this even jarring? Like, when I look at Sonic, I'm like, oh, no, that's not the same game. Like, it's still the same to me, right? Like, because Magic is a core set of rules to me, so.
I'm starting to think that Wizards intentionally made Ether Drift so cheesy because then you can print any secret lair drop with any IP. And if I think of Ether Drift, I'm like, well, is that actually worse than like Loot and Chandra driving the silly car? No, that not really. So that's fine. The bar has just been lowered.
We had SpongeBob. We had Princess Bride.
Yeah.
I think we've crossed this bridge. The movie just came out, or maybe it's a couple months now, right? This seems a little awkwardly timed. I would have expected them. Okay, I would have expected this like 6 months ago to promote
leading
the movie.
up to the movie.
Yeah, right. But Sonic is still beloved. Listening to the reaction of my LGS is hilarious. Like Magic players are like, does this fit in my universe? I'm not sure how I feel about this, right? Everyone else is like, wow, Magic gets the coolest collabs, right? Like, I want the Sonic Soul Ring. It's so cool. Like everyone else is like super hyped about this. So I think this is going to sell out fast. Gotta go fast, right? I think it's going to sell out very quick. The cards are extremely powerful. Eggman, Dr. Robotnik, is extremely broken. I'm not even sure why this is a card. But I think this will be very popular, and I think we are beyond the point of universes within. I do believe that if, let's say, Sonic is the greatest thing ever and is like $500, Wizards will reprint it, right? They will just make a Universes Within version and call it a day. What they will not do is if Sonic is 10 cents and no one cares about it, but someone sends an angry email wanting a Universes Within version, like they will not make that, right? There's no point to making that one, right? So...
I agree with that. Yeah, I don't think you just have to reprint all of them just for the sake of having Magic versions, but I do hope they at least figure out a way to reprint some of the expensive ones. I think we're going to see that with some of the X-Men ones too, depending on if they get reprinted in the future in the X-Men sets. But like some of those are still kind of pricey. Before we go today, go ahead.
The LGS reaction for this, I think, for my side of it, is that it's not in standard. It's kind of a bummer. And I am curious, like, if something has a secret layer, are they willing to go back and turn it into a set? Because I think, imagine if Mario happened, right? Mario is like only 5 cards. I think Mario could be a full set. I think Sonic could be a full set.
Oh, could Sonic? I don't know Sonic that well to know if it could be a full set. I would say I do not think being a secret lair drop would exclude Wizards from making a full set of it in the future. I mean, we kind of have an example of it, and maybe it's not a good one, but with the X-Men cards where we got a lair drop and we know that sets are coming of Marvel sets in the future. So I don't think that Wizards just crosses it off the list, but I also think they use secret lair drops for IPs that maybe they don't think there's enough to make a full set of. Like, I think that's also like one of their workarounds. So I think we could see a full Sonic set in the future. And I guess, if it's a lair drop, that they're willing to sell their IP rights to Wizards, which in some ways maybe that increases the odds that eventually we get a full set of some of them. But all right, I got one fish mail on the way out the door. This one's for you, Richard. It's from Blueberry Detective on Blue Sky. Says, MTG Fish Mail, since One Piece gets since One Piece gets casually messaged a lot more on the podcast than before, I thought I'd ask, what do you wish Magic would learn from the One Piece TCG, and why has it replaced Jund in Richard's heart? So the big question, what, Richard, do you wish Magic would learn from One Piece?
That realistically that they would do, or they actually should do. So the mana system is the number one problem. You ever get any new player playing Magic, they're like, what? Like, so you mean I missed my land drop and do nothing for 8 years? Okay, that's great. So that is the one thing I see people instantly complain about, variants, and not hitting your lands and not getting the right colors. Like, that is such a 1995 design or whatever, right? Like that simply does not happen in today's games. What they could realistically learn, which I think they learned with Final Fantasy, is the game doesn't matter as much. You just slam popular characters, make very fancy foils and arts, break away from your stupid Magic frame. Like they love like a frame with a scene and with the tiniest character you can ever imagine. Right? One Piece is like, look, 50% is face, okay? 50% of the card is face, right? It's like very upfront in your face.
Zoom.
You get to see your character, right? You get to see like cool foiling and whatnot. Not this like, oh yes, it is Chandra, but she's like in a big room and there's all these elements to it. Like, no, right? Just give me Chandra like in my face. Epitomized by like the manga frame faces that they have for their alt art leaders. But any of those kind of like dynamic anime poses, like it's not even a One Piece thing. It's like every anime card game does it. Like you have to stand a certain way when you draw them. So I think Wizards will have learned that by seeing how people react to the Final Fantasy borderless alt arts and then the Surge foils. So that I think will happen for sure. But
also, don't let that get in the way of the great game you have, Wizards. Please,
no, they've given it up. They've given it up, Krim. I like this past 2 weeks, I have never been like more ashamed to be a Wizards customer, right? Like just seeing how people react to Final Fantasy. So like, here's Magic player, okay? Oh, I'm gonna buy into Legacy, okay? Oh, okay. Can I get some heavily played duels? Can give me some damaged duels that like can pass for heavily played at tournaments. Final Fantasy players, $800 for Surge Foil Sephiroth. What a steal! Give me 2. While you're at it, I'll take 2 collector boosters. So we'll just gamble, right? Because it could be 2 Surge Foil Sephiroths in there, right? Like they're slinging money like it's nothing, right? We're like, well, is it standard playable? Is it gonna rotate? Like Final Fantasy players, like I'm just gonna put it on my mantle, $500, just like leave it right there. And I'm like, there's no way Wizards will cater to us anymore, right? Like this audience is so easy to please. Throw your Stola on any bulk card, make it foil, and we're good. Right? Versus, let's perfectly balance like 6,000 cards, right? Make sure this is playable while keeping prices down and accessible to everyone. Like, impossible. So, I don't know. I feel we're at a turning point, and I feel the the hardcore grinders are kind of like gonna be left out, which they already have been. Fair, like, to be fair, tournament Magic has been on the downswing, but yeah.
Oh man, we probably got a whole podcast we could do on this. Actually, I will just say I think Tournament Magic was on the downswing, but it's kind of reversed trajectory a little bit. They announced more of the showcase events next year, so like, not that it's back to where it was, but I do think that it's better than it was like 3 or 4 years ago. It's not where it was 10 years ago, but it's rebounded somewhat from where it was like during the pandemic era for sure. But that's a topic for another time because we have already
We'll
gone
get into it
way
next
over
cast.
time today. Yeah, next cast. Remind us. That's a good topic. Anyway, Richard, how do people send in fish mail for next week's podcast?
All right. Hit us up at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and then we'll answer your questions and go off on a random tangent.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 542 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard Cribb, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to our sponsors for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So, until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.